For many of us, listening is the communication skill we use the most. However, a lot of people listen poorly, and they rarely stop and think about how to improve this important skill. Chapter 6 is all about listening, and we have 4 short videos for this chapter. Now, poor listeners hear what's being said, but they rarely listen to the whole message. They get distracted by their own thoughts, by their negative self-talk, or any kind of intrapersonal communication, or they get distracted by what's going on around them. And they might even formulate their own response, come up with an answer or feedback before the person who they're talking to has even finished speaking. And because of that, they miss crucial information. Good listeners, on the other hand, enjoy better relationships because they fully understand what people are saying. When they're working in teams, their team members are more productive because the team members feel that they can discuss problems easily and talk through solutions. I like this quote. The greatest compliment that was ever paid me was when asked me what I thought and attended to my answer. Think about how many times you say, "Hey, how are you? How you doing?" And you don't really pause and listen for their answer. Okay, in this chapter, we'll know what listening is and why it's important, some challenges we have to effective listening, and then we'll talk about steps in the active listening process. Now, what you'll be able to do is come up with strategies to attend to messages, understand them, and remember. You'll be able to critically evaluate information and provide appropriate feedback about the messages you receive. This quote from Stephen Covey is important. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Are you guilty of this? Do you find yourself doing that? Kind of listening at first and then start thinking about what you're going to say before the person has finished? Okay, listening versus hearing. Hearing is a physical process, right? It's just your ears and, your anatomy that allows you to perceive sounds in your environment. Listening, on the other hand, is a cognitive process. It's the process of receiving and then constructing meaning from messages. Listening includes the processes of attending, understanding, evaluating, remembering, and responding. So when we are mindful, we are paying attention. Notice that phrase assumes that we're paying attention. In other words, it costs us. When you're paying attention, there's a cost. It costs you to listen. In order to truly listen, we have to follow the steps of perception that we talked about in Chapter 2. We pay attention. We select stimuli on which to focus. We organize our thinking based on what we know, interpret what we encounter, and then evaluate the experience. For example, you might be listening to a conversation that's going on down the hall or in another room, and you may have caught a man's deep voice, so that got your attention, and then you might have paid closer attention, that's the selection, to his words, "free food." From past experience, that's the organization skill, you determine that it's best to stop what you're doing and find out what's going on. That's interpretation. By doing that, you might save yourself some time and money getting your own lunch later. That's evaluation. So just hearing that voice and picking out a few words, you go through attention, selection, organization, interpretation, and evaluation. So this diagram goes through what I just said. First, you pay attention. You select the stimuli that you're really going to attend to, organize your thinking, and then you interpret and evaluate. So some challenges to effective listening. What's your style of listening? Everyone has a listening style, and it's your favored and probably an unconscious approach to listening. Content-oriented listeners focus on and evaluate the facts and the evidence. People-oriented listeners focus on the feelings their conversational partners may have about what they're saying. Action-oriented listeners focus on the ultimate point. What's the ultimate point the speaker is trying to make? And time-oriented listeners prefer brief and hurried conversations, and they use nonverbal and verbal cues to signal to their partner that they need to be more concise. Now, your preferred listening style might be influenced by cultural and co-cultural identities. Okay, some challenges to effective listening. First is listening apprehension, which refers to the anxiety you might feel about listening. You know, you're thinking that it's going to be something that you don't want to hear, might be bad news, and that anxiety is listening apprehension. Now, your processing approach. Active listening is the deliberate and conscious process of attending to, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and responding to messages. But passive listening is just, it's a habit, and it's an unconscious process of receiving messages. Comprehensive listening refers to, really listening to understand, to learn, remember, and be able to recall the speaker's message. For example, as you are watching and listening to this video, hopefully it is comprehensive listening. Now, empathic listening is listening to show support or understand how someone feels. So when you are talking to a friend who maybe just broke up with their significant other, that is empathic listening. You're showing support. Critical listening is listening to evaluate a message. Now, what are some of the barriers to effective listening? Well, noise is certainly one, whether it's internal psychological noise or just, sirens going by, or maybe you're at a concert and the music is so loud you can't hear. Too much information. If someone goes on and on and on and they're just giving you every little tiny bit of information, too much information is a barrier to effective listening. Culture is, can be a barrier. Maybe you don't understand the words that they're using. They're speaking in a way that you're unfamiliar with. Pseudo listening. It's a type of listening that it's a type of non-listening that consists of appearing to be attentive in a conversation so that you look like you're listening, but you're not, or you're only partially listening to the speaker. So the intent of pseudo listening is not to listen, but to cater to some other personal need that you have. Selective listening is hearing and interpreting only parts of a message that seem relevant to you, and you might ignore the rest. Selective listeners will oftentimes form an argument in a conversation before they've heard the full story, which makes them not only a poor listener, but probably a poor speaker too. Okay, ambush listening. What is ambush listening? Well, ambush listening is the intent to, attack someone while they're speaking or, immediately after they pause. Active listening. For the women that are watching this, well, and for the men, one of the things that women often say to men is, don't try to fix this. I just want you to listen to me. And I would bet that almost every man out there has heard this at some point in time. So I have a quick video that illustrates this point.
It's just, there's all this pressure, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail...
See, you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like... There's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things...
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, come on, let's go. I hope you enjoyed that video. I think that's a great illustration. Sometimes all you want is someone to listen to you. Okay, this is the end of part 1 of 4 videos for chapter 6.